Hey everyone, Richard Taylor here. Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. Today we're going to talk a bit about Final Cut Pro 10, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, some of the things that happened at IBC, Final Cut Pro related, and we'll talk about the Final Cut Pro Summit as we usually do. But also as we usually do, first I have to do a little bit of maintenance, and then I will be right back. See you in a few minutes. Okay, here we are back. Final Cut Pro Radio TV. We're going to talk a bit about Final Cut Pro, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, a little bit about IBC. If you were at IBC, make some comments in one of the places. You can go to YouTube, Facebook, wherever you'd like to go. And let me just see something here. That's fine. Oh, yeah. There we go, Final Cut Pro. So, let's talk about IBC first. So, if you were at IBC, there wasn't any Final Cut Pro news. Apple was not there. I'm sure most people that went there, I guess there was some ProRes news. Some of the companies were going to support ProRes RAW, some new companies, and Blackmagic came out and said they had a new plugin for Premiere Pro and Avid, not for Final Cut yet, but I expect that to be forthcoming. Maybe at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, probably. Who knows for sure? We don't know for sure, but probably at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. That would make complete sense if they brought it out there. That's where you're going to find most of the news this fall for Final Cut Pro unless they release a version to coincide with the Mac Pro earlier than the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. So when I went to NAB last year, the only reason I go to NAB is for Final Cut Pro news. That's the only reason. I don't go there to see anything else because I can watch all the rest of that stuff online. So leading up to the NAB, it was obvious that, to me, that Apple wasn't going to present there anywhere. So would I like them to present there? Sure. I would. I was a little disappointed. But my vision of reality, my filter on reality said they weren't going to show there because Apple doesn't do trade shows anymore. So I'd like them to. A lot of people would. But the odds of them actually doing a trade show are very slim, if non-existent, completely. So the fact that they weren't at IBC, disappointing? Sure. Unexpected? No. It was expected. I would have been surprised if Apple was at IBC and did any Final Cut Pro announcements. That's the way that they've been for quite a while. So if they change in the future, that would be great. I enjoyed when Apple did. They weren't on the show floor at NAB, but they did have a private, well, it was off the show floor. It wasn't private. It was public presentation for, in 2017 and 2018, they did a presentation for Final Cut. Look, this year, the stars aren't aligning. There was nothing really to announce at NAB. There's nothing really to announce at IBC. So if they just go there and just promote Final Cut Pro, the same stuff that's been out for a while, I'm not sure if they're going to do that. They just don't do that anymore. So I wish they would. A lot of people wishes they would, but I really don't see it happening at this point. Apple, when they do a presentation, they can reach millions of people with their live streams. They did one for WWDC. They did one for the iPhone event, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just don't expect them to be at the trade shows anymore. I think they would if they had something to announce, something new to announce. So originally I said I was not going to get an iPhone, a new iPhone 11. I didn't think there was enough there. However, I've changed my mind. And there's a couple of reasons why I've changed my mind. Number one, I think, is the first reason is I've learned of a way that I can finance the iPhone 11 without taking from my Mac Pro fund. My Mac Pro fund is completely funded at this point. I can get more than just a base model Mac Pro when it's announced. So that fund is safe. I have the money for that. I'm not going to buy it the first day it comes out. I'm going to wait probably till 2020, see some reviews and stuff, because buying one of those, just say I spent $8,000 on a Mac Pro, upgrade the CPU or whatever. Anything else can be exchanged. I can get a faster GPU. I can get more RAM. I can put hard drives in it, all the other stuff, get the afterburner card later. But the base model, I'm figuring about maybe $8,000. If I got a iMac Pro, which would be the only other choice for me, it would be the same amount of money. It would be $8,000. So it's not that dramatically different for me. But anyway, so originally I said I was not going to get one of the new iPhones. First off, I found a way to finance to pay for it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I keep seeing all of these reports, these incredible reports of improved video, of improved photography. For example, the night phone, where is that? So the night vision, whatever the heck they're doing, is absolutely astounding what they can do in a dark room with the iPhone. So just watch this little quick video.
TPG, and this is night mode on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. I'm handheld, holding both devices right now, and I'm going to do a 3-second handheld night mode shot. Look how cool that is as it fades into view. And so I'm holding two phones. Let's take a look. That is really sharp. That is wild. And look at the scene, how dark it is. It's so dark that my older iPhone can barely even focus. Hey there, Zach from TPG, and this is night mode on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And I'm handheld. And look at the scene, how dark it is. It's so dark that my older iPhone can barely even focus.
So that's amazing. The dark mode itself is absolutely stunningly amazing. What the heck they're doing. They're taking 6 snapshots and they're doing some IA and putting it all together, and whatever they're doing in the background is absolutely amazing. So that's one of the reasons I'm going to get it. They're also, the video has been improved. So it has 3 backwards cameras and 1 forward camera. And from what I understand, lenses and cameras, each one of those can do 4K. You can record, I think, on 2 simultaneously at the same time. That's what I understand. With Filmic Pro, anyway, I don't know if any other apps will develop that. It's hard to say. So that is amazing in itself. The photography is much better. You have 3 different lenses, the telephoto, the wide, and the ultra wide. And so I ordered the 11 Pro Max, the 512 gigabyte version, space gray. I should be getting it in a week or 2. And like I said, I paid for it without rating my Mac Pro fund, which was the main criteria. I have the money in the Mac Pro fund to buy it, but I didn't want to rate that. Oh, the other thing, 5 hours longer battery life on the Mac Pro. I mean, the iPhone Max Pro. 5 hours longer battery life. That's absolutely amazing. So I mentioned Filmic Pro earlier. What they're doing with this is amazing as well. You're able to record, you're able to see all 4 cameras and screens on the iPhone and you can pick, I guess, 2 of them to record. So that's pretty amazing too. So let's just...
And Tangerine, the first theatrical trailer shot entirely on iPhone, Sean Baker. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Phil. I shot Tangerine on iPhone using Filmic Pro, and I've been working closely with Chris and the Filmic team ever since. Now, every shot has the right lens. As a filmmaker, it's my job to figure out which lens that is. On set, I use a tool called the Director's Viewfinder. It helps me find a frame and choose focal length. Filmmakers have been doing it like this for nearly 75 years.
But what if you could use what we're all going to have in our pockets? We're delighted to preview
So this is the amazing part
of Filmic Pro. It's going to move filmmaking forward. Let's take a look at the next generation of lens selection. We've divided the viewfinder into individual feeds, visualizing every field of view available on the new iPhone. With the new A13 and the higher sustained performance of the new iPhone, you can shoot with our most complex capture pipe.
So that's absolutely amazing. All 4 cameras, you can choose whatever scenes you want to record. Now, what I have a question about is how is that going to work with live streaming? Is anybody going to be able to utilize those 4 camera scenes like that, or 2 of the 4, for live streaming? I'm not sure exactly how that would work. I guess once they get in people's hands, I think they're coming out Friday. I think they're supposed to come out Friday. That's what I understand. That will be very cool. So the other question I have is, will those videos be time code synced for import into Final Cut Pro? Will they have the appropriate time code? Both of them will be the same time code. That would be another amazing thing.
Times longer than before. But now you can shoot with multiple cameras at the same time, giving filmmakers even more options.
And I love that because it's totally transformative. With 2 cameras rolling in Filmic Pro, I get twice as much coverage on the same take, reducing my number of takes and giving me more options in post.
To facilitate
Another thing is I've been podcasting for 15 years now. 15 years. I started 15 years ago. The only other person I know that was podcasting back in those days was Adam Curry, who, of course, is the guy that started it. He had a podcast called The Daily Source Code. The actual first podcast I listened to was Daily Source Code. And then I listened to Dawn and Drew in the fall. And then in the spring, I started podcasting myself. And I've been podcasting continuously, no breaks, for 15 years. So it's always easy to do a podcast when you have a major event coming up like the Creative Summit. It's easy to do a podcast when something like that's coming up for Final Cut Pro. What's harder is to do the podcast continuously, especially through the summer, without taking a break. Well, Final Cut Pro Radio has been broadcasting, podcasting all summer long. We didn't take any breaks. We haven't taken any breaks for 4 years. We're starting our 5th year in January. And we broadcast all summer long, even when there was no Final Cut Pro news. That's the hard time to podcast. Easy time to podcast is when there's an event coming up, like the Creative Summit. Like right now, it's easy to do the podcast. There's plenty of subject matter to do, so that's pretty cool. I enjoy doing the podcasts. Let me see what else we got here. So some of the things that they talked about at some of the things we talked about at the IBC was Avid and Apple working together. It looks like Avid is going to support ProRes RAW, and Apple is writing the drivers for DNX HD. So Ben says, I hear you doing the podcast, Final Cut Pro X and Adobe tutorials. It's to keep them going especially when there's no news. The summertime's the worst for me. He says, I hear you. So this is another comment we had added to the podcast here. Tangier Clark, definitely going to need a remote of some kind to choose angles on the phone. Touching the screen, thereby shaking the image is a no-go. I agree with you. I don't know if that'll be some kind of hardware, maybe plugged into the lightning port or whatever to switch the angles. I agree with you. Now, I'm not sure how effective that's going to be with streaming live. We'll have to see how that works. But what I found interesting about the news about IBC, Apple and Avid working together. Okay? Apple is writing the 64-bit drivers for Avid, and Avid in turn is going to support ProRes RAW. That's the way we want it as consumers. That's exactly what we want. So Eugene says, ProRes RAW and Atomos recorders were everywhere at IBC. They're everywhere. So hopefully when Final Cut Pro 10.5 comes out, we'll have support for B-RAW in Final Cut Pro. That would be good. That's the next thing. Once again, Avid and Apple are working together. Let's see Blackmagic and Apple working together the same way. Blackmagic supporting ProRes RAW in DaVinci Resolve, and Apple supporting, Blackmagic supporting, ProRes RAW and Apple supporting Blackmagic RAW in Final Cut. Both of those are features that the consumers want. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. All right, so I just wanted to stop on here for a couple minutes. One of the things we talked about this weekend, but it's such a good tip, I'm going to report it again. Mark Bach tweeted this. In order to take your proxy images with you on the road, a lot of times it's hard to link up the proxies when you have an external drive. So he got this from Twitter, from in the socks of FCPX. I think it's a French Twitter account. So what you do is you create a sparse disk image, set it as media destination in Final Cut Pro 10, generate your proxies, right? This is a sparse disk image. On the go, take the library and the disk image on a separate drive, and before you launch Final Cut Pro 10, the library, mount the sparse disk image. And there are all your proxies. They're right there. They should link up without any problem whatsoever. So on FinalCutProRadio.com, I'm redoing the site, FCPRadio.com. I have a Final Cut Pro Creative Summit page, 2019, and it has one video right now, a kind of a highlights video, and it has the basic schedule that's going on. Thursday, welcome ceremonies, 1:30 to 2, sessions 2 to 5, keynote 5 to 6, social media. Friday is Apple Day. We get to go to the Apple Spaceship Campus, and we get a meeting. We get to go to this campus, and we also get a presentation from the Final Cut Pro team, Pro Apps team, but I'm not sure if that's going to be at the Spaceship Campus or if that's going to be at One Infinite Loop where it has been previously. I don't know what's happening with that. And then, of course, on Saturday, sessions all day until 5:30. Apple Pro Video Team panel and discussion is happening on Saturday. So on Saturday, they come to us. They're going to come to the Juniper Hotel and talk to us like they did last year, private session. No video recording of that, no audio recording, no photography. So that's Saturday. So here's one of the things about when I talk about the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, and I talk about how it's the biggest Final Cut Pro event in the world, because it is, because it's only Final Cut Pro. I'm not talking about only the 150 people or so that pay to come to the summit. I'm talking about this is where Apple makes announcements to the world about Final Cut Pro. They show us, who are there directly, and we go out immediately. And last time they let us post on social media, they let us post photographs, they let us blog about it immediately. So this is where Apple makes major announcements typically. They have for the last 3 years. They've made major Final Cut Pro feature announcements at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. If there's no sense in having all this hubbub about Final Cut Pro and the Pro Apps team if they have nothing new to show us. They have to have something new to show us. Now, in 2016, they released Final Cut Pro the day before on Thursday. That's the day they released the Touch Bar MacBook Pro. That same day, they released it the day before. So on Friday, the team showed us all the new features. They showed us the brand new version of Final Cut Pro. And then the following year, in 2017, at the summit, they debuted Final Cut Pro 10.4. We were the first to see it in public in the world that we could talk about it. I said, we can talk about this? They said, yes, go ahead and post on social media. So that was 2017. 2018, which was last year, they introduced 10.4.4 with a lot of new features. Once again, new features. Of course, it has bug fixes and some other things, but it has brand new features. So when I talk about the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, I'm not just talking about the 150 people that are going to be there. That's one segment of it. It's much more about Apple reaching out to the world through this demonstration with their, of course, we're dedicated Final Cut Pro users. That's all the whole weekend is just Final Cut Pro. None of these other events, IBC, NAB, they're not just Final Cut Pro. There are dozens and hundreds of other vendors doing their stuff. Blackmagic, for one, for example, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed going to the Blackmagic demonstration last time. I think they're an amazing company. If I wasn't using Final Cut Pro, I would either be using Filmic Pro. I'd either be using LumaFusion on the iPad, or I'd be using Resolve, Blackmagic Resolve. That's going to be amazing. So we got a comment here. Imagine if iPhone 11 Pro pan-tilt servo motor from Ekenrone, iPhone remote control for MacBook Pro. Wow, imagine Apple implementing an FCPX live component, Keynote app 2. There's a lot of things that Apple can do. So one of the things that I always say about Logic is Logic has a remote app. It's had it for years. It has a panel of faders. It has plugins you can touch, visit graphically, all kinds of graphic things. Final Cut Pro needs something like that for the iPad, some kind of a companion app. That could be coming in 10.5. Who in the heck knows? Could be coming in 10.5. So here we go. Here's the official countdown clock to the Final Cut Pro FCPX Creative Summit countdown clock. You can find it at FCPRadio.com, right on the main page. Let's get there. There we go. Right on the main page is a FCPX Summit countdown clock. 50 days. And I'll be on the West Coast once again. I get sponsored to come out there, so that's where I will be. All righty. This is pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to come on and say, of course, I'm always testing my equipment. That's a given. So also, if you're on Facebook, you can hop over to Final Cut Pro Radio. We have our own Facebook group. It's groups Final Cut Pro Radio. Hop over there. We have discussions, all kinds of things happening. We had a FC Pros meetup last Saturday. Tony Gallardo, Bill Davis, Serena Catania, Brad Olson, and myself. We have 1,000 views on that already. All these Final Cut Pro Radio Live videos get 800 to 1,000 views. The ones that I did for the Aussies, the Aussies, part 1 and part 2, got 1,500, 1,600 views so far. So that's very cool. I really like that. We have some more FC Pros of these Final Cut Pro Radio Live. One of the things, so far, the FC Pro Live has gotten 35,000 views in the last several months. That's a lot for me. I put some time and effort into it, but the FCP Radio TV Live has gotten 35,000 views over the last several months. So that's pretty cool. It gets thousands and thousands each month. So that's not including the podcast, of course, Final Cut Pro Radio podcast. So we're going to have a new episode coming out this week, probably beginning of next week, one or the other. Stay tuned there. You can find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast. I've been on there, like I said, for 14 years on iTunes, and 15 years doing the podcast, something like that. I have 2 podcasts. And I enjoy doing them for the most part. They're a little bit of work, but that's just the way it is. So if there's nothing else going on, I am going to, like I said, I changed my mind. I'm getting the iPhone 11 Max, Pro Max. That's what they call it. It's the biggest one. One of the things that I do, look, I can't even carry my iPhone 6S Plus in my pocket. It's just like I put it in here and I'll leave the jacket somewhere. Put it in my jacket pocket. I'll leave it somewhere. If I don't have a jacket on, I can't put it in my pants pocket. I need a belt clip. I absolutely need a belt clip. So that way it's omnipresent with me. So I got to get a new case. This is one of those Otter cases, a real heavy duty ones, because I have dropped it a few times. So everybody, we have a lot of friends that are going to be out there at Final Cut Pro at the summit. And until the summit, until the next time I go live, this is Richard Taylor. I'll see you later.